All right, next item is the approval of the telephone company services.
I'll let Scott work on this, but I think the action sheet summarizes all the steps that have been taken by Scott and Mike Connors, who oversee this. And I know Scott followed up with our legal counsel and Comcast in regards to the 2 or 3 questions that Mr. Walsh submitted on the contract, so I'll let him talk to that. And he also has a follow-up on, there was a lot of discussion about last board meeting about fiber and copper, and when one goes down, how will the other one work, so he has his answers on that.
Okay, so first thing is, there was a red line copy in there. There were a couple questions submitted. There was a question about managing versus monitoring the actual system. I did speak with Comcast on that. Managing would be more of the internal control within the school district, and the monitoring is what Comcast does just to make sure that there is a dial tone from the fiber coming to the school. So they do monitor to make sure that their service is up and running, and then the managing side would be the district's portion of it where we manage it internally. As far as the question with the copper lines, if the fiber line goes out, the lines automatically switch over to the copper. Any phone can dial out, but we have a limited number of copper lines available. However, being 2018, the majority of the staff and students have a cell phone, which would be available to make calls out. I do not see an issue with if the line goes out switching over to copper, because we have several ways to be able to communicate out of the building.
And so the way I understood that from Scott this morning when we went through that was, if 7 or 10 people picked up the phone and all tried to dial out, only the 3 or 4 that got to the copper line first, those 4 would get out, the other 2 would get the busy stations.
So it's strictly for like an emergency purposes with it, so E911 backup.
Yeah. So at that point, you'd get to if fiber's going to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
All of them fixed by fiber.
Exactly. That's why we have in the contract with the 4 hours of max downtime with Comcast. So recommendation is to approve the 3-year service agreement with Comcast from July 1, 2018 until June 30th, 2021.
That answered all the questions that were submitted?
Except they didn't answer the question based on the way I asked it on what they're doing with the monitoring. They're clearly indicating they have a right to have access to what is said over the phone lines. That's what they're in 9.6. And the concern is, then they're saying because they don't have the data, they're not indemnifying or insuring us if there's a breach of the data. So I realize they told you that, but that's not what their agreement says. So my only concern still, I mean, again, maybe we'll have to accept it. I mean, I've negotiated agreements with Comcast. They're not easy to negotiate with, but I think our attorney should take a look and see if they agree with what Comcast said. And if they don't, try to get them to change it. And I think we can approve it pending, Kevin and the attorney talking to Comcast about it. What they're telling you is not what their agreement says.
Okay.
I'm not surprised they told you what they told you, to be perfectly honest
Yeah.
with you.
I just wanted to get a handle on, okay, monitoring versus
Yeah.
managing.
So I'm just suggesting.
So your
we
concern,
approve-
Tim, is at the bottom paragraph that says Comcast shall have no liability or responsibility for content received or distributed by customer or its users through the service?
Yeah, because in a different paragraph, they're saying they can monitor it. The only way you can monitor it is have access to it. So if they have it, the data, and then we're saying they have no liability for it, then we're responsible if they have a data breach, which happens all the time nowadays. So I just suggest we have our attorney take another look, and maybe they'll say they don't read it the same way I do. That's what we pay them for.
Okay.
And if they do think it's worth it to go back to Comcast and say your answer doesn't jive with what the language in the agreement says. And again, I think we've done this before. We can still approve the agreement pending them resolve, Kevin working with the attorney to resolve for one issue. If the other board members agree.
then I'll be agreeing with that. I mean,
Yeah, that's fine.
subject to, okay?
Yep,
Okay.
I understand.
All right, do we have to modify the
Resolution.
resolution?
I could do it if you
All right.
want me to.
You wanna read it?
Yeah. The Board of Education Township High School District 2A, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the 3-year service agreement with Talbot County Service with Comcast pending the superintendent working with the board attorney to resolve the issue concerning Comcast access and protection of the data, as presented in the April 10th, 2018 board agenda packet.
Got a second?
Second.
Go for the vote.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.